It won't work, but it will.
We're
work.
live.
We're live. Huzzah, huzzah, and hurrah. Hello, everybody. It is Halloween, and it is DHTV. Now, we were last year all dolled up, but it went terribly wrong when poor Zec realised that he slightly had a problem with the glue that he'd used. And we won't mention the guest. It all went a bit pear-shaped all round.
Oh, yeah.
This year, right, for Halloween, we haven't dressed up. I've done a Simpsons with the scary Scarlet just because I could. But we were trying to be a bit more serious because we have a guest. And it's good to see that he's taking the show as serious as we were hoping he would.
It is.
Like a poppadom. I think it is. Now, what we've got to try is the one, the only, the superstar that is Nabil Shaban.
Intro time.
DHTV. Oh, he's good. He's good. You see, you wouldn't believe that all this is done with Zec's fair hands. And
my fair hands.
So as you may tell, dear viewer,
I'm the most sane one.
Yeah. Nabil.
How good do I look like?
You've got a bit of a long list.
Like Dominic.
That's it. You look just like it. You haven't changed a bit.
Cummings. Dominic. I am the real Dominic Cummings.
It's something about Halloween, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a bit weird. It's Halloween. You always know. How do we? I mean, the thing is, if you haven't heard of Nabil, you need to go and do some research. But this show will hopefully set you on the way because, you know, as you may remember, viewers, I have talked about the fact that I used to be on telly. Well, before me, there was some young upstart, some rebel, a disabled man that stood astride of us all, the progenitor, the one that opened the doors, and that was Nabil.
The man with genitals, did you say?
No, the progenitor, not the man with genitals. I know you've got genitals. I'm going to say no more about how I know this. But anyway, that was a club night, wasn't it? Anyway, yeah. I think the thing is, Nabil, I don't really know where to start with your career. So would you introduce yourself and tell us some of the highlights that you're most proud of? Because it's been a bit of a groovy one.
Well, now I remember in 1983, I was already a bit of a star then, but the thing that I liked most about 1983 was I decided to go down to the Women's Peace Camp in at Greenham Common near Newbury, and I thought that I would give them a hand because I was looking from the television at the footage at how the police would just come and pick up the women and throw them to the side to allow the convoy of nuclear weapons to go into the American base. So I decided I would use my car to block the gates. And I had a yellow Mini at the time, and I did just that. Mind you, I was amazed at how quick the police were in picking up my yellow Mini and swinging it aside.
Kind of defeated the object.
What?
Well, you park your Mini there, and then you think, hang on a minute, a Mini's quite light. Probably find 5 or 6 burly policemen.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they weren't there was the American military.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. And they were there in their helicopters taking photographs of me in their Land Rovers. You know, I think I had about 4 or 5 pictures taken by either MI5 or MI6 or the CIA or whatever. But I was quite proud of that moment, really. And but anyway, I suppose the first time I was in a TV film was 1982 on Channel 4.
Yep.
Where it was the first film I'd ever done as an actor, and it was when Channel 4 started. It was on the first day of Channel 4, and I got cast as a dirty old crick. And my job at the time was to leap onto the bed of Ian McKellen.
Yep.
Now, I can claim I supposedly wanked off Gandalf as my first career move in 1982. And but I didn't really do it. I mean, I made sure my hand
That was Ian
It was all
McKellen, he would have been
simulated.
all right.
Yeah, but
I'm
well,
sure
yeah, he did. Look at that. The presenter's views and opinions are their own, based on their lived experiences.
Yeah, we
have to do it.
Yeah, you've got to make sure that.
It's normally
This
for
is
Mick.
not- This is normally for Mick. I can quite see. But anyway, yeah, I think he might have been a bit disappointed that I kept my hand away from his knob, but I wasn't quite sure if I was supposed to do it because in
You weren't
films
method.
in those.
You
Yeah,
weren't
exactly.
method, you weren't
I
going to
prided
the full
myself
method
on being
acting.
a method actor. But at the same time, well, if it had been a woman in the bed, maybe I might have been a bit more enthusiastic. But
You wouldn't have found her knob.
Come on, you did open the world up to yourself. I must admit, now I know why. When I met Sir Ian McKellen, he hit on me so violently that I didn't quite know what to do. It's obviously he had the memory of being in bed with the bill. He thought maybe this is my chance.
Maybe. Mind you,
I'll
you
get
picked him up.
Funnily enough,
anyway.
this isn't going where I thought it
What was
was
that?
going.
What was that called, Nabil? Because we
Walter.
know.
Walter.
Yeah,
Walter.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was I couldn't believe it that should be my first experience in a movie, pleasuring some bloke in bed in a lunatic asylum, which is where the scene was set.
Mm-hmm.
I had done a couple of documentaries and things like that prior. Like in Canada, I did something about people with cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 1980. I would say that was probably my very. No, it's not true. I started quite young in film, television.
I was going to say, you probably started like I did, where you were paraded in front of doctors and filmed and then showed to nurses and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was in an educational film at the age of 13 in my underpants and my caliper, while the doctor pointed at bits of my body, and it was like,
oh dear.
Yeah.
And it perverted your mind ever since.
Well, I was in the room full of nurses, and I was 13 and they were 17 and 18, and I was like, I just started to realise that girls were probably more fun than possibly I thought they were before, when they just played hopscotch.
For anyone that's tuned in for talk of Doctor Who, I do apologise for the start.
It's coming,
these two disabled guys who are just literally flaunting themselves in their underwear.
Yes. Use that. You're a Johnny come later. You joined the gang. If you'd have been there when you were young, you'd have experienced this kind of really horrible bit of your life where you have no control. And actually what happens is you get, everyone tells you what to do. And so your mum goes, we're going to hospital today because you're going to make a film. And you go, okay, mum. And then you turn up and then they say, take all your clothes off. And then you're there in your brown and orange white fronts.
That must have been one of those Pathé films back then, Mick.
The entire room of girls that aren't that much older than you are told to look at your almost naked body while a doctor goes, and this is the list of freakish things about this monster, and then it's filmed by the BBC for nursing training. It's probably still there. They're probably digitized it.
I feel like a shepherd, but I must move the conversation on if we're going to get through this and to the crux of the whole thing.
So, and you did one of the other things you did, I know, is because you did a documentary for Channel 4 about disability and sexuality, didn't you? And that was 85, 86, was it? Or was it a bit before that?
84.
Right.
Well, we filmed it in 83.
Yeah.
And then I think because I actually won several awards because it was so kind of unusual. And the topic, daring to talk about sex.
Well, that was Channel 4, wasn't it? It was.
That was Channel 4.
There.
So, I mean, in fact, it was because of me doing the Ian McKellen wanking that I got the part in Skin Horse. because the producer of Walter, a guy called Nigel Evans, he saw light some of my performance in Walter, and offered me a chance to collaborate with him on the Skin Horse, which was this sex and disability documentary, and he offered to pay me some money to write some of the script. So this is the first time I got paid as a writer, as well as a presenter, and so on. So that was, and that won quite a few awards, including the was it the Television Society Award for the most innovative program of the year, and then it even won an Emmy in the United States. What I thought was amusing about it in the United States was, before the program started, it only happens in America, before the program started, some serious looking bloke comes and looks at the audience like it's the Twilight Zone, or what's the other one, the outer edge or something, and he says, "Now what you're about to see is a subject matter that you probably wish you don't see, and would be well, the thing is, these people are serious and they mean what they say, and god damn it, don't they have the right to fuck as they claim?" No, he didn't say that. I just.
No, I was going to say that doesn't sound like American television that I've ever seen, I must admit. But
yeah, I made that. That's my fan.
America's still not there.
There was someone who had to prepare the audience to be shocked and to realize that these people have a right to say what they got to say. And I think actually it was probably heavily censored. I never saw the version that out to America.
No, in America it was very censored.
But it's funny because this is something. When I found out about this, because I didn't see it, I saw you in your acting, but I didn't see the documentary. And in '89, I shot a documentary about disability and sexuality and sex for Sex Talk, and that was a show. And everyone at Channel 4 went, "You do know this is the first time that this subject has ever been covered." And I was like, "Oh, I'm a first." And then, as I researched my list of firsts, because I suddenly realized that some of my firsts, they were less than true. I realized that most of my firsts were less than true because you'd done most of them.
I'm sorry, Mick. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it's like when I used to tell everyone I won an Emmy. They'd be, "Well, I won an Emmy first." Fuck off.
Did you ever do Blue Peter, Mick?
I got offered it, but I said no because of the sordid lifestyle that I lived that was outed about a week later. So I should have just said yes and got the check.
Because I was watching the Bill's Blue Peter appearance just a few days ago when I was looking back at it. Eating peaches, I believe they said it was.
Yeah.
But still very much in character of what I think has to be your big claim to fame. And still, I can't find you actually on Twitter. You don't have a Twitter.
No, he won't join. Not now.
But there is the hashtag Nabil Shaban. And it's all Doctor Who fans. And they are even there at times wishing you a happy birthday, even though you're not seeing it. And so the fame continues of this character. And what I want to know is how much of Syl did you create and how much did they create?
Knowing the Bill, it was all the Bill.
That laugh.
Yeah, I created that laugh. I created that laugh. Well, basically what happened was that the BBC got in touch with Grey Eye Theatre Company and said that they're trying to find an actor to play Syl. And someone had suggested that I could be the person to do it. But they knew my reputation because somehow or other, even by 1984, I think, when the BBC eventually contacted me, I'd already got a reputation of saying, I'm not going to do anything if it's going to make disabled people look bad, or if they're going to look evil. You know, I don't mind being evil, but don't say it's because I'm disabled. And and they said, no one will recognize you. Won't be in a wheelchair if you were to play the part. You'll be dressed up as a monster from another planet.
On a trolley.
And sorry?
On a trolley.
On a trolley. Well, they like to think it was some kind of tank, a fish tank. That was originally in the script, which I rather like the idea of, being in a fish tank and sort of spending most of my time going. But the electricians in the studio were a bit nervous of all that water sloshing about in the tank. And, this is all pre-CGI, and it would have been pretty hard to fake it to make it look convincing. And also, they were a bit worried that I might get electrocuted inside a fish tank with all that
rubber suit on. Yeah.
I can just see the guys in the studio now going, yeah, no, we are not insured for this.
Yeah, well, quite. And neither was I.
The Bill's going, put me in the tank! Put me in the tank!
I was shouting, I want to go in the tank. And they said, no, you're sitting on top of it. So that's how I end up on top of it.
It's funny because I remember that vividly. It's probably the first time I'd seen like a disabled actor in a real mainstream show. There'd been Sandy in Crossroads, but I mean, he obviously wasn't disabled and then became disabled as he acted the part. So we made him join. It's part of the magic that they don't know about, right? Don't ever crip up, because if you do, but
we're coming to
and what I loved about it was that your character played upon the body shape you have, and it made it so that was part of the point of hiring you. It wasn't like, I mean, rather than it be a sort of sad thing or something, it was you were alien, and that was it. And I remember seeing it, just thinking, this is the future, man. This is brilliant. And I
just thought it looked really hot. I just thought that you must have lost so much weight sweating in that thing.
I did.
Yeah,
it was very hot. I had people standing around me off camera with electric fans.
Oh, right.
They were my first Doctor Who fans. And they were, their job was to keep me cool whilst under all those lights. And the second time I did it, they actually made a better suit, which allowed me to breathe more. But even so, the director had to attack the suit with a screwdriver to put in some holes, because the special effects people had forgotten his instruction. He said, right, if we ever get to do Syl again, let's make sure he's got some holes to breathe through. And they'd forgotten. Oh, and the other thing was that they said that they promised me before I agreed to do it that I wouldn't wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
But my ugly face was sufficient to terrify audiences, so I didn't need anything special for my face. And the director Ron Jones insisted that the head and body would be two pieces, so that I could move my head around.
Yeah.
But when the suit arrived and we just literally about to start filming, because it was the first time I saw it, no, it was a one-piece suit. And so initially when we tried the camera rehearsal, when I moved my head from side to side, my face would keep disappearing inside. Well, it's a bit like, this isn't.
Well, I tell you what, before we move on to the reason for you coming on, let's have a little bit of a look at some of Nabil on Doctor Who.
That is enterprising. You may be obliterated.
brilliant. I'm sorry, it was. I remember watching it, and I was just like, you know, I was by that time I was about 17, 18, so I was kind of at that point where it's like, is it kids' TV or not? And then you got on, and I was hooked for the whole thing.
They need to bring Seal back. I mean, come
yeah,
on.
they do.
They've revisited a lot.
I was going to say that with the new broom that's coming back to bring back the old broom, and now we've got a new doctor that's one of the old doctors. And surely, with all the other ones coming back,
Cybermen, the Daleks, so many of them have been back.
We need to all write to the BBC and say, bring back Sil. And not only bring back Sil, but with a new, young, different bloody actor. No, bring back Sil with Naban as King. What we want to do is go to the planet where you're from, where they're all there. Actors.
Well, you know, the thing is, I've been, obviously I was wondering why Sil, you know, because the new Doctor Who has actually been going since 2005.
Yeah.
And not once has anyone come to me and said, you know, we want you back. And I'd heard a story that Russell T Davies had made attempts to get Sil back with me playing Sil, and the BBC blocked him. I was blacklisted.
Yeah,
and
I know the feeling, Nabil. I know the feeling very well.
You know the feeling? Why you
no, it's
he's only hanging by a thread here.
Sorry?
He's only hanging by a thread here, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
anyway, let's put that aside now.
Before we go on to the book, I just want to talk about the fact that, because of course, the other thing that you are famous for, especially within the disabled community, is your campaigning. Because you were lots of recent events and media stuff have said that, you know, it all started down in London with a certain couple. But actually, it didn't, did it? The disability rights movement started much earlier than was portrayed, and more up with sort of a certain Nabili type person at the lead, or at least part of the beginning of it. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of the disability rights movement that you were involved with, because I know it did actually revolve around the media, didn't it?
Well, it certainly involved. It was about the media because Grey Eye was created in 1980. Well, formally created in 1980, and the BBC at that time were very enthusiastic about us, and I think the BBC is still enthusiastic about Grey Eye, so long as I'm nowhere near. But the disability movement from disabled people certainly had its beginnings in the 1970s, inspired by various civil rights movements, whether it's Black or Northern Catholic, Northern Ireland civil rights movement, women's movements. And I would say that one of the beginnings of the disability liberation movement was, say, in the early part of the 1970s at Hereward College, which is the college that I went to in 73. And that's where I met Richard Tomlinson, who is the co-founder of Grey Eye, who was a lecturer at the time at Hereward. And he suggested that we should set up a theatre company. And that was, as I said, in 74, 75. And in fact, it was in 1975, and there's a video that I put on YouTube showing one of the first demos by disabled people protesting against the invalid carriage, the plastic pig, as some people call it, or the blue Dalek, as other people call it, or Spaz Wagon was another.
Yes, I always heard it called the turquoise coffin because how
was. Exactly. That was what our protest was about, because one of our mates at Hereward got killed in his, and we decided to have a petition to demand that, you know, we be given safe, reliable vehicles that were on 4 wheels rather than 3, but were not made of fiberglass, etc., etc. And that was, and you'll see a little protest in Coventry in the town square, which I shot, protesting against these what I used to call the euthanasia on wheels, and or death traps was another name.
It's really weird, isn't it? Because have you seen recently? There's all these kind of things on Facebook about, oh look, here's a new concept, and it's basically like a reinvention of the blue 3-wheeler, but where you wheel in your wheelchair and then drive it in your wheelchair in basically like a box on wheels. And you're like, no, we had that years ago. They were really bad, and we campaigned to get rid of them. So stop reinventing stuff we've already had that we don't want.
And these little fiberglass things on 3 wheels were quick, weren't they? I mean, you couldn't race one of those things. Those things were so quick away from the lights.
There speaks someone from the place of experience, eh? Yes.
I certainly tried to go faster than 60 miles an hour in those things. But the only problem is that in the crib carriage, which was another name we had for it, shook about so much, it was so unsteady, and the drive belt, which basically turned the wheels, would snap, and usually you would get a warning. I would be on the motorway. Now, the earlier model of the crib carriage was actually banned from being on the motorway. That was called the Model 67. But by 1970, they brought out a new model. It wasn't that different from the old model, but somehow or other, it was allowed on the motorway. And the number of times, like, I would be on the motorway trying to go as fast as I could with it, and I'd get stopped by the police, pulled aside, and I'd have an argument with them. And they'd be telling me, no, this is you shouldn't be on the motorway. I said, yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. And then I would refuse to leave the motorway because I had somewhere to go. And I said, look, you check up on your facts. Find out if a Model 70, which is the make that I've got, the model that I've got, is permitted on the motorway. If you find that I'm not telling the truth, here's my address and phone number, and you can arrest me. Now, bugger off and let me carry on my journey. I never heard from them again. So
the reason why I wanted to talk about this, and so I know you did a huge protest outside Granada because of another thing you weren't given a job for because they went to someone that wasn't disabled. And the reason why is because of the fact, I talk a lot about this, that actually history of disability, especially in this country, has been rewritten quite a lot, normally by the people that have done us wrong or the people with power. And you, along with people like me, have been more written out of history than, like I said, I know I would never have thought of going in television if I hadn't have seen you. Do you know what I mean? There was a lineage of that. And again, I went into it, which then led to another generation and another generation. And now we're where we are, but we're kind of forgotten. And I think it's, why I'm all totally behind the Bring Back Sil campaign entirely. But of course, and this is where the professional TV presenter bit comes in. Talking of history, you've got a new book out, haven't you? And here it comes, folks. Here is the book. And it is a tome. No, that's it. No, you're doing it the wrong way. Just bring it in slowly for a cross camera. There it is. No, slow, more this way. That's a bit more. There we go.
Ivarr the Boneless. The Saga of Ivarr the Boneless.
And it appears to be that the character appears to bear a massive resemblance to a youthful Nabil. But who was Ivarr the Boneless?
Well, he apparently was a Viking from Denmark who father was Ragnar Hairy Breeches, a major hero in Danish mythology and folklore. He even killed dragons, Ivar's dad. Then Ivarr, his dad Ragnar, got killed by an English king of Northumbria,
Right.
called Ella, and because he was killed, Ivarr, who is now a young man and fairly active as a pirate, a warrior, and his brothers and he were, were leaders who were ravaging and savaging France. They decided, right, we need revenge.
Yep.
So Ivarr led a great army to attack Northumbria with his brothers and captured the killer of his dad, tortured him, and finished him off. And once he'd got, taken Northumbria, he thought, hey, I quite like it, yeah? I think I'll grab some more territory. So off he went and, took Mercia, Nottingham. It was called Snottingham in those days. And then he went off to East Anglia and made another martyr of an English king, Edmund. Hence, he's called Saint Edmund now. And so Ivarr continued ravaging around, raping. Well, he didn't do it. In my book, he doesn't rape. He's a good Viking. He's a born again.
He's a nice, snubby, killy one. That's a step too far. That's a step too far.
Now, obviously, we've had this big rewriting of the Viking saga on Discovery Channel, which was huge, absolutely huge.
And it's thanks to me. It's thanks to me.
They feature Ivarr the Boneless.
Channel 4 and I made, a documentary about Ivarr the Boneless. It was called The Strangest Viking. That was in 2002, 2003. Yep. I'm the first.
Yes, that's another first that you are not credited with.
Because it was amazing to see this portrayal of this disabled warrior, because you don't see it, do you? Disabled people are always normally weak and trodden on, and this guy was far from weak and trodden on. But how far did they remove the real Ivarr to then have sort of artistic license with him? Did they really sort of...
Well, the thing is, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows the real Ivarr. No. Because it's all in saga, it's all in myth. Yeah. It's there was a saga about his dad, but interestingly, half of that saga is about Ivarr. And in that saga, it talks about how he was called boneless because his legs were rubbery and he couldn't stand on them and he couldn't walk. Right. So he had to be carried about on a shield. And that's where I picked it up, until I wrote to Channel 4 and suggested a documentary. No one in Britain had heard of Ivarr the Boneless. He just wasn't, no one knew about him. And a few Anglo-Saxon scholars, they did. And what they also knew was that Alfred the Great, because Ivarr was contemporary to Alfred, was very jealous of Ivarr's skill at basically conquering. And he knew that Ivarr had a disability. And he thought that maybe if he had a disability, he would, perhaps be as good or as effective as Ivarr. Yeah, this is Alfred. And do you know what? He was praying to God for an infirmity or whatever. And do you know what God gave him? Piles.
Not quite the same, is it?
So he wasn't happy set on the shield.
Yeah.
No, this is what I don't know.
That's all in this book. Yeah?
Right. Brilliant.
You know what? And I think this is the great thing about the fact that what you're doing with first the documentary, which I saw and I loved, and then obviously the book, is placing disabled people front and center in history. It's something I'm always talking about. So many key figures, Napoleon, Julius Caesar, both Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, they were all disabled. What we would now call disabled, as well as many others, but these are like, the big ones. And Ivarr is another one of those. Less well known, but still really important to our history.
Yeah.
But just never get mentioned. And we need to start shouting about that to place ourselves as normal in history. And also, like you said, Ivarr developed his skills as a commander, as a leader, right? Because he couldn't go out and just stab people up. So in a way, there's a whole load of other stuff around the concepts of the social model, the concepts of a disability is something that is placed upon you by society. So how it treats you is how you react to it, you know, and there's so much.
I mean, be careful. If the Tories hear that he came over here disabled and conquered England, they're going to say to us, look, the step's not going to stop you lot. Get back to work. Yeah,
but what they don't realise is we'll all just get so cheesed off. We'll jump on shields and go around stabbing them up. And then it'll be very bad. Very bad for everybody. We've all decided to be a bit Ivarr.
The Tories, anyway, the Tories don't need any excuse to persecute us or prevent us.
But for balance, if we ever pick on the Tories, we do have to look at the other side. So I have to mention Labour Party. There you go. Carry on.
Labour Party.
I have to mention the other side.
About them. We just have to mention them.
They're no different to the Tories to Labour. They might have been different if Jeremy Corbyn had succeeded in being Prime Minister. But now Jeremy Corbyn is one of the key people in the 1980s to begin the move for a Disabled Discrimination Act.
Yeah,
Jeremy Corbyn, along with a Derbyshire MP, Labour MP, was so outraged at the way Granada treated me, because I was asked by the writer and the director and producer of a television children's series, Microman.
Yes.
Asked to play the lead as Microman. Of course, I was interested and had an interview with them, and they assured me that about 80% they were convinced I would get that part, but finally it would have to be checked with Granada, chief executives, etc. And when they proposed the idea that I should be Microman, Granada said no, he would frighten the children.
Yeah. And see, that's the other thing you see is that we need to recognise is that you going through that, firstly experience it, but then the reaction that you did to it led to someone like myself and Andrew Miller being offered presenting roles in kids' TV just a few years later, because they realised that there is this big groundswell within the disabled community. That if you went, oh, we might want you to do the show. Oh no, we don't, because you might scare the kiddies. But that we aren't going to take it sitting down. And I've always said that we need to acknowledge the fact that there is a huge debt. I owe you a debt because you gave me my chance.
The thing is, this is people behind desks saying, "Oh, he will scare them." The kids wouldn't have been scared. Kids just ask questions; they learn through it.
The kids already, even Doctor Who was just been a really piece of cake to go. The evil baddie in Doctor Who. Well, now he's a goodie in Microman. Done, finished. But we've all had it, haven't we? That attitude that you meet, where you go into a situation where you're a shoo-in for this. And then some, pencil pusher says something weird, and you're like, "Oh, okay, so that's that gone, has it?" I won't even tell you about the record company stories. Jesus, you think television's bad? The music industry is even more full of
I know. I mean, Matt Fraser, who's had a band, and he had terrible problems trying to get taken seriously as a musician, and even some bands that were initially interested in him kind of were scared when they actually thought that he could be fronting their band, and that his thalidomide hands would be off-putting to an audience.
We've spoken about it before, but the people that we see who are disabled are what Mik's referred to, I think, as the acceptable disabled. you know, they may have lost a leg or they may have this, but they're not the severely disabled.
I think as well, what it is there also people that won't rock the boat, and we all start off, and I know this because I remember the Bill doing the same. Start off being quite the darlings of it. Then at some point you get aware, one, you're probably not being paid what you should have been doing, and then you start asking for more money, and they don't like that. But the other thing is you start saying, as Nabil said, I won't do that. That's a damaging portrayal. I won't say that. That's not what we do. I mean, I remember having at least 2 blazing rows with TV producers about things they wanted me to do, including one where I got actually sacked from BBC Three for not doing the show, but I refused to give them their money back, which is probably slightly why I'm blacklisted. But the thing is that you now got, you know, we fought that. We knocked down those barriers, and you know.
Yeah, but are they just going to be rebuilt again? You know, no offence. You know, you knock them down, and then a new generation comes in, and it just happens all over again.
Well, it does.
They'll throw in something, little bit of tokenism in here. You go, oh, look, we got this and that. You know, we've got this on, you know, Strictly. We have someone disabled every year. CBeebies, so it's very good. But still, in mainline film and TVs, we're not getting disability representation.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's why I decided to write Ivarr the Boneless. You know, I started to work on this Viking project back in 1986 when I first heard about the story of this Viking leader who was disabled.
Where did you discover this? Where did you first hear of this?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Go on then. Sorry, I'm doing a Mik.
Yeah. Now, I'm a bit slow, you know.
Oh, all right, okay.
He's a raconteur. He tells his stories. They're going somewhere. You've got to let him go.
An old fella, I like the sound of my voice, and I like to go on and on and on and on and on. But anyway, the point is, at that time, I was going out with a disabled woman who had no hands, Tina, and her face was badly scarred when she was a baby from a fire. And she was one of the stars in The Skin Horse.
Yeah.
And then she subsequently did another television documentary in 89, which was about religion and disability. It was called The Fifth Gospel. I also was a co-writer of that documentary, as well as being a presenter in it, and her pal. And the thing is, round about 86, she asked me if I'd give her a baby. And I said, yeah.
I've got 2 in the fridge.
Yeah.
I've got some next door. Hold on, what do you want?
Right.
It's like cabbage patch doll.
But because I knew that my disability was genetic.
Yeah.
My sister, I've got, 2 sisters and a brother, and 2 of the 4 of us have got brittle bones.
Yeah.
And the reason is actually, it turns out, was that my mother and father were first cousins. So whatever genetic defect they had, them being together meant there's a good chance. Yeah. Exactly. So when Tina said, will you give me a baby? I said, well, we'll need to think about this, because the chances are we have to accept the possibility that that baby may have my disability. Now, obviously, I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think you have a problem, but we have to be prepared for that possibility. So we went to see, or I did, genetic counselors about that possibility. And it was then one of them, her name was Dr. Elizabeth, something or other. But anyway, it was her who said that you realize that there are several historical characters with your disability. I said, really? Yes. Because I said, that's brilliant, because I'm looking for roles to play. We should be in history. And we don't see many disabled people in our history. So tell me, I want to know, who are these characters that I could play? Because I've always fancied, being in a Shakespeare film or Robin Hood or Richard the Lionheart, etc. But, you know, as a disabled person, I thought that was not going to happen because disabled people die very quickly in history when they haven't got the lovely NHS to help them. So they said, well, first of all, I think Attila the Hun had brittle bones.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm not so sure about that. I do know that he was allegedly a dwarf.
Right.
I think he was a walking dwarf. So I can't see me playing him. And then they said, and then there's Toulouse-Lautrec. He also suffered from brittle bones. And I said, yeah, that sounds good. Again, though, he could walk.
Yeah.
So I can't really, you know, unless we do a kind of more abstract. And I know once a theatre producer did want to have me playing Toulouse-Lautrec on stage, and I was quite
perfect for it. I can see it now.
I
can see it now. I think you'd be brilliant for it.
Well, I was dead keen to do it, but it never happened. I mean, you know, as you know, half of the things that get suggested to you just don't happen, or 3/4 or whatever. And then she mentioned Ivarr the Boneless, and I said, "Oh, I've never heard of him." And she said he actually couldn't walk. He had brittle bones. He couldn't walk, and he was carried about on a shield. But of course, I started to do all the research I could, and that was '86. When I was doing that work, and I started to write bits of the novel. I was also writing bits of the film script. But, you know, as an actor, I didn't really have a lot of time to spend writing. So, because I was quite lucky up until about the end of the 90s. I was, you know, in regular work, mostly theatre. That's why a lot of people thought, I haven't seen you on telly for ages. And that's partly because, you know, I started to.
You were treading the boards, darling.
Yeah, exactly. So I got to play Hamlet, and I got to play Angelo in Measure for Measure, and a whole load of other great parts, but they were all on the stage, and no one ever saw them. I even got to write a one-person play with me playing several characters. One was John Lennon, the other was his killer, Mark Chapman. I also included Yoko Ono and Mark Chapman's mum and dad, and John Lennon's mum and his aunt Mimi, and I finally ended up. Well, I had two other characters that I invented, which gave me my into the story, because I wanted to play Mark Chapman, and I knew, well, I can't, A, because I'm not an American, and B, he wasn't disabled. So what I did was create a character who's in a lunatic asylum in Britain, and he believes that he really killed John Lennon, and that Mark Chapman was a kind of puppet that he had created to do the killing. So it meant that I could play Mark Chapman, but it was a delusion. You know, it was a hallucination. But the main character, who I called Charlie Markham, who had made up the whole scenario as a way of hiding the truth about why he was in Broadmoor, which was because he killed his mother.
Right. So see, that's the level of depth to a piece that only Nabil would come up with.
So if you want a copy of the book of the Saga of Ivarr the Boneless, I thought it was on Amazon, but it's not. That's just a tease. You've got to email Nabil, and he will send you back all sorts of weird stuff. But you may also get to purchase his book.
There it is.
£30 plus £5 delivery, but it's a book of some size. It's not a book you read on the train. This is a a book you can stand on to get something off the top shelf.
Yeah,
well, none of us can, but you could.
Yeah, well, now, it's nearly time to go, but before we go, I'm just going to remind Nabil of the time when we worked together on the pilot for the BBC Two comedy Inmates.
Inmates.
And I will never forget it, because we had a scene together where we were meant to be drinking vodka out of a hot water bottle that he had smuggled in. Unbeknownst to me, live in front of a studio audience, Nabil had actually put vodka in the in the hot water bottle. So I was actually having to drink, and I was like, "Oh, buddy!" And so my reaction to it being vodka was actually very real. But the other thing that he kept doing was he had a sock which he changed foot all the way through the piece to see if anyone in continuity would notice. And so every time he went to do a piece, he had this pink and white stripy sock that would change foot. And it was, I spent the entire live element of that thing trying not to laugh all the way through. And I was meant to be this really stroppy, wanky bloke, which, let's face it.
No, he was the wanky bloke with Sarah McKellen.
It was typecast. Alan Sutherland definitely went, Mick Scarlett, he can play this. In the end, when they went to radio, they gave it to bloody Matt Fraser. But anyway, I'm not bitter. But I don't
think I played me, did I, in the radio version?
Did you? I didn't listen to it. But Matt stole my role, the song. So
yeah, no, I didn't get. But then I'm not surprised I didn't get to play, because I had an argument with the two writers, and they decided we're not working with him again.
Well, I must admit that's maybe a little happier, because I had countless arguments about the fact that what kind of wanker would be in rock and roll in this era. And then they went, it's not set in this era, you idiot, it's set in the past. And I was like, is it? When's it set? It doesn't make any sense. If you want to find out, go online and search for Inmates on YouTube. It is there. And there's a youthful Nabil, and there's a very youthful Mick wearing a very strange wig.
Well, I put it on YouTube.
Oh, well, you did it. Oh, well, there you go then. So now we don't.
Yeah, I put it on there. I go around putting on stuff that I've been in, because I've been written out of television.
Yes, no, I did exactly the same. Loads of clips from me from when I was on From the Edge and all that, and 1 in 4 I put on there just because young people don't know it happened.
It won't be seen again.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I never brag about being on the BBC, but back in about 1983, there was a local news piece at Warrior Square swimming pool, and I swam across the background. But do I go on about it? No, I don't.
See, what you don't brag about. The thing you don't brag about is all the lives you save when you were a fireman. We've never done that.
I didn't save any lives.
Never run into a burning building and pulled out a young screaming person going, help me.
No, I never did that. I worked for the Ministry of Defence. They set fire to things that went bang and went, go put that out and see what happens. I didn't save any lives. Yeah, no, I slept a lot.
It's nearly, what time is it? He says, looking at his clock. Oh, there you go. We have overrun. Sorry, folks.
We're going to quickly promote. Go and check out shop.disabilityhorizons.com. We did have a special deal for you, but I wasn't here last time and it ran out. So, but there you go. Just go and buy something anyway.
There you go. I think they still have got a special sale on with some certain stuff that keep you wet, dry when it's wet. But have a look. And all I can say is thank you so much to the wonderful Nabil Shaban for coming on tonight. I think we'll definitely have you back for sure, because I get the feeling that there are many stories that you could tell them. We could just sit and nod like young.
Nick, you won't just sit and nod. You won't just sit and nod.
I've been quieter tonight than on any show that we've ever done, because I'm so in awe of who we've got on. Join us in 2 weeks' time for another fantastic guest.
Oh, we have.
Go buy the book. It's great. Find out about the true history of disability. Find out that we were there stabbing people up, not raping them, of course. We weren't into that, but stabbing them up.
No, we
and,
we were. It was being done to us. Although I have found out through my DNA, I do have 3% Danish DNA.
Most of us will.
Most of us will.
Right, so yeah. And that 3% was Ivarr.
Yeah. On his own. It's all Ivarr. He was there.
It's all Ivarr.
He didn't need to rape. They were just so willing. They threw themselves.
They just threw themselves on the floor and said, throw that shielded boy at me.
Right, that's it. We nearly finished professionally for once, but we didn't. Anyway, so with that, thank you so much for being with us tonight, every viewer type person. Enjoy going out and enjoying Halloween. I get lots of nice sweets.
I'm turning the lights off. I don't want them looking.
I'm in a sweet-free house. I'm going to have to make a jam sandwich to get sugar in my body. Ooh. And with that, we will go. Thank you, Nabil. It's been great to see you again, mate. And
thanks a lot for coming on. Mik and Zec for the first time. And I hope
it's been an honour.
Thanks a lot. So with that, we say bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.